What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to examine Uncanny X-Men issue 148. This issue is brought to you by this creative team right here. In this issue, we get a couple of small things that happen and then a big thing. So we start off with Cyclops and Lee Forrester. They were trapped on an island, and then in the previous issue, a bigger island showed up out of nowhere right next to the one they were on. They have waded over to that island. It looks like something out of an H.P. Lovecraft story with men with octopus faces, statues of men with octopus faces, and Cyclops and Lee, they are scantily clad, and Lee decides we're alone, we both are hot and barely wearing any clothes, now's a great time to try to bone Cyclops, and he rebuffs her, and then she gets mad at him and runs away. And she says she's not really looking for a deep interpersonal commitment, she's just kind of wanting to blow off some steam, I guess. Sorry for using that phrase. So she gets mad at Cyclops, and then she comes back to him, and they apologize to each other, and they hug, and then we're not sure if anything actually happens. We do see these two at the end of the issue, and they're both still wearing what little clothes they have, so I don't know if they actually boned. I have no idea, and I don't think that's something that can be confirmed unless someone asks Chris Claremont. I have no idea. But anyway, then we cut to Nightcrawler and Wolverine are having an impromptu training session outside, right outside of the mansion. I guess the Danger Room is still in shambles when the X-Men's loved ones were all kidnapped by Miss Locke. Havoc said that they should have a quick Danger Room training session since his team that he was using to go and rescue them had never worked together, and they showed him that the Danger Room was still a wreck from when Kitty Pryde was running away from the Ingarai demon. And not much time has passed since then, so I only assume that the Danger Room is still not usable, and that's why Wolverine and Nightcrawler are training outside. And then we cut to Angel tells Professor Xavier, Wolverine is a psychopath, and I don't want to belong to any group that contains Wolverine. And I feel like this is because John Byrne wanted to put Angel on the team. On John Byrne's forum, he said he stealthily wanted to reintroduce all of the original X-Men back into the team, I guess except for Jean, who they had just killed off in the Dark Phoenix saga, and I don't understand why. I've never found Angel to be that interesting of a character, at least as of this point. I find him much more interesting after he becomes Archangel, but here, I have to say good riddance. I feel like Chris Claremont didn't really want Angel on the team. I think that was more of a John Byrne thing, and then once John Byrne left the book, Claremont was left with Angel. What do I do with him? How about I just have him leave? And Angel does raise a good point. He says Wolverine attacked this robot in, not Latveria. I kept thinking it was Latveria, but it was in Doctor Doom's secret headquarters somewhere in upstate New York. But it was a robot that looked like Storm. And Angel mentions, yeah, his senses told him that it wasn't Storm, but what if that had been some woman made to look like Storm? What if this was a situation kind of like in The Dark Knight, where the Joker dressed up the hostages to look like the bad guys, and then Wolverine would have accidentally killed an innocent woman. And maybe Wolverine's senses would have told him, okay, that is flesh and blood, I don't need to slice that, or maybe his senses told him, I don't hear a heartbeat, I don't smell sweat on that robot, or something like that, and that told him it was okay to go ahead and attack it. But we don't know. It was kind of a quick impulse decision, I guess, and we don't really know what was going on through Wolverine's head. All we know is he knew that that wasn't Storm. But Angel doesn't really try. He says, I've tried to work with him, but no, he hasn't. He's worked with him for like a mission, and we haven't really seen him and Wolverine try to get to know each other and try to work out any differences that they might have. And we know from reading the classic X-Men reprints of the from 1975 forward, we know that Wolverine and Angel kind of had a falling out with each other very early on, where he was trying to flirt with Jean Grey, and Angel wasn't having that, because if he can't have Jean Grey, and if someone else is going to have her and it's not going to be Scott, you know what I mean. He didn't like the idea of someone other than Scott and other than him having Jean Grey. Not having her, like, you know what I mean. But anyway, we really haven't gotten to see any fallout between these two since Angel rejoined the team. And years later, in the Chuck Austin Uncanny X-Men run in the early 2000s, Angel and Wolverine finally get all their differences resolved. Just out of nowhere, Angel says, "Wolverine, I want to apologize for how I treated you years ago." And Wolverine basically says, it's fine. And Angel does rejoin the team in the early 90s, and at that point, he doesn't seem to have any problem with working with Wolverine. I guess by that point, he realizes that he is also a little bit brutal as Archangel, and so I guess it would be hypocritical of him for him to call out Wolverine by that point, but there's like a good 10-year period where these two are both in the X-Men, and Angel never bothers thinking about, I was kind of a jerk to Wolverine back in the day, but then in the Chuck Austin era, just suddenly they reconcile with each other. But Angel is no longer part of the team, like I said, good riddance. And then the plot of the issue. This issue introduces Caliban, and he has grown up in the sewers underneath New York City, and he can sense other mutants, and basically he is really lonely, and he wants a friend. And so Kitty Pryde, Storm, before I get to this, sorry, Banshee is reunited, or united for the first time with his daughter, Teresa Rourke. And the issue mentions that Banshee married Teresa's mom, Maeve, but then Teresa goes by the name Teresa Rourke. So if Banshee married her, I guess in the 60s it was possible that someone would say, "I don't want to take your last name." I wouldn't think that would have been very common at that time, and I say the 60s, maybe the late 50s, I'm not sure how old Teresa is supposed to be at this point. I would say late teens, but anyway, she is going by Teresa Rourke somehow, and then she and Banshee have a happy reunion, even though they've never met before. And Moria, she's a little disappointed because she feels like Teresa is going to be a rival for her affections for Banshee. And Storm confides in Moria, saying, "I feel the same way," because Kitty sees Stevie Hunter as a potential mother figure, and Storm also kind of sees herself as a mother figure for Kitty, so she kind of has this tension with Stevie Hunter. It's not Stevie's fault, but Storm acknowledges that she doesn't really like Stevie because of that. And then we go to this venue where Dazzler is playing a rock and roll show in some skyscraper. It seems like a really weird place to have a rock and roll band performing. It doesn't look like there would be a whole lot of room for an audience there. There's quite a few people there, but it's not like if you go to a band performing at a stadium where there would be like 10 times as much room for people to watch the band. And maybe Dazzler is not supposed to be that powerful, that popular at this time. Maybe she's only supposed to be kind of well-known. And we are told here that Dazzler is a friend of the X-Men. And you could have fooled me. Bear in mind, I have not been reading the Dazzler issues as I've been reading these X-Men issues. About 3 years ago, I did read through the Dazzler series, but I wasn't reading it concurrently with the X-Men stuff going on at the time. So I don't believe that in those early Dazzler issues that she was really keeping in contact with the X-Men. And I know that the X-Men have not been keeping in contact with her in this series, so it is a little weird that all of a sudden they say, yeah, the X-Men are longtime friends with Dazzler, because they had one adventure with Dazzler in the Dark Phoenix saga, and then they went their separate ways. So it is a little odd that this is acting like Dazzler is a longtime BFF with the X-Men, but she is performing. Spider-Woman is here after the X-Men's team up with Spider-Woman in her own series. She brought Teresa here to the X-Men to meet Banshee, and then she's hanging out with Storm, Stevie Hunter, and Kitty Pryde watching Dazzler, and then Caliban shows up because he wants a friend like him. And so Caliban shows up at the skyscraper, and it's complete chaos. Everyone is running around screaming, even though he doesn't look that out of place. When he first shows up, he just kind of looks like a homeless person. Now, when he takes off his hat, he does look not like a typical human being. His skin is very pale, and he doesn't some of his features look a little abnormal. I'm not trying to be mean, but he doesn't necessarily look like a flat-scanned human. And so I understand why he would put on a big scarf and a hat, but when he shows up, he's wearing all this clothing, and he doesn't look that like out of place or hideous, and everyone is like, oh, look at that! and then it's just complete chaos. Caliban attacks the guards because he says, I've met humans before and they always attack me, so they would have done it again. And so he can sense that there are mutants in the building, and then he goes up, and Kitty Pryde, they all know, okay, something's going on, and Kitty runs away from the group, and then she is phasing, and somehow, I have no idea how this works, Caliban is able to grab her while she is phasing. I have no idea how that works, because Caliban is basically just a living Cerebro who can sense other mutants. He shouldn't be able to nullify another mutant's abilities, but he wants to kidnap Kitty and bring her back to the sewers to be his friend. And then Spider-Woman and Storm are trying to stop him, and then Caliban basically says, these guys, they're like me, but they're attacking me like they're humans. Why would you do that? I just want a friend. I just want to kidnap Kitty Pryde against her will. Why are you trying to stop me? And maybe I should ease up on Caliban a little bit. I do get the feeling, reading this issue, that Caliban has some kind of learning disability. And I don't want to read into it if it's not there, but when you look at this issue and other issues, Caliban always refers to himself in the third person, and it seems like he was abandoned at a very young age. He said he was born looking like a monster, and his father named him after a monster, and so I don't get the feeling that Caliban went to any schools, and he probably grew up in the sewers, and any learning he had was self-taught. But I get the feeling that Caliban just doesn't understand kidnapping an underage girl who does not want to go with you is not okay. And when her friends are trying to save her, they are in the right. They are not the bad guys for trying to save Kitty from some guy who wants to kidnap her. And Caliban acts like they are in the wrong, and I feel like that's because he doesn't know any better. He grew up completely by himself. He doesn't understand that kidnapping someone who doesn't want to go with you, that's just not how you do things. If you want friends, you need to put your best foot forward, so to speak. And then Storm offers him a spot at the mansion. You can come with us, and we can be your friends at the mansion. And for whatever reason, Caliban decides he's not going to do that, and he runs away. And then, this was weird. At least twice, Storm, at one point she says, we all acted hastily. No, you didn't. Kitty Pryde was being kidnapped, and you attacked the guy who's kidnapping her to save her life. This is a 13-year-old girl. You don't want to just say, it'll be fine. We should act cautiously. A 13-year-old is being kidnapped. Let's not rush into things. No, you want to go in there and stop this guy who's kidnapping her before something bad happens to Kitty. And then after Caliban runs away, Storm says, we all made some terrible mistakes tonight. No, you didn't. You tried to stop a 13-year-old from getting kidnapped. That's not a mistake, Storm. Also, she says, if it wasn't for Professor X getting us all together, we may have all been hunted down like Caliban was. Storm, you were being worshipped as a goddess. I don't think you were in any danger of being hunted down by other people. So that was a little weird. And then Kitty Pryde is thinking about how she's always been a little standoffish around Nightcrawler because of the way she looks, and this episode tonight has taught her that she doesn't need to do that, and maybe now she needs to be nicer to Nightcrawler. And I feel like they've already kind of been going in that direction with Kitty being a little bit nicer to Nightcrawler. I felt like they were making steps towards that in the annual where Nightcrawler, where they all went to hell to rescue Nightcrawler, but I could be mistaken. But anyway, not a whole lot happens in this issue. I have never been a big fan of the Morlocks, and technically the Morlocks aren't introduced here. It is a little weird that Caliban's whole motivation is he wants friends, and it doesn't seem to indicate that the other Morlocks exist at this point. Now, years later, we will find out the Morlocks have been around for at least 20 years. The Sugar Man from the Age of Apocalypse, he used not the Sugar Man, completely different, Dark Beast from the Age of Apocalypse. He used what he learned from Mr. Sinister in the Age of Apocalypse, and he did experimentation on mutants, and that is what created some of the Morlocks. And he's been in the main Marvel Universe for 20 years. When he left the Age of Apocalypse, it shunted him back in time 20 years, so the Morlocks have been around for a while, but of course, Chris Claremont didn't know that the Age of Apocalypse was coming at this point, so in this issue, Caliban acts like he is completely alone in the sewers, and that there are no other deformed mutants who live under the sewers with him. I want to say the next time we see Caliban, the other Morlocks will be around at that point, and they don't really make any mention of why did you try to kidnap Kitty Pryde to be your friend if you had all these other Morlocks who have been down there with you this whole time. They just kind of say, just forget about it. But anyway, then we end the issue back on that weird island with Cyclops and Lee Forrester. They seem to be okay with each other now, and then someone shows up and says, hey, I thought that my island was abandoned, but apparently not. My name's Magneto. How are you guys doing? And then that is leading into not a big storyline, but I want to say around issue 150. So I don't think that story starts next issue, but I could be wrong. But anyway, that's about it for this issue, so let's consider this one Examine.